Oh my God, TPR, people can see us now.
Yes, they can, Ryan.
Hello, everybody. I hope everyone's having a lovely, lovely Wednesday afternoon. I'm sorry we're a little bit later than normal, but, not too much later. I mean, we're still at least on Wednesday, so at least we do that. Sean's away this week. He's out, traveling the countryside or doing whatever he's doing. Real quick, if people can't, number one, thank you, TPR, aka Taylor, for being on the show with me this week. If people can't hear Taylor, please let me know in the chat because, I'm not very good at the live streaming thing. And if his audio levels are too quiet, just please let me know in the chat. But how are you, man? How are you excited? Are you excited to be here?
I am extremely excited, Ryan. This is a little, I don't want to say a dream. It's a little milestone come true. I never thought I would be in this position.
Nice, man.
I'm so excited, yeah.
To be fair, you've been doing good stuff overall at Same the Game Media. And a lot of times, usually when Sean is away, a lot of times I always love to bring people on the show that just haven't had a chance to be on the show before. Just to get to know more people. And you've been in the community for a long time, whether it's, asking us questions every week or, just hanging out there. I that's why I thought it'd be fun for us to have a little chat this afternoon. Plus, you did really well in We the GamerCast too. So you got that going.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So I think this is going to be a fun show, although people better be prepared ahead of time for a lot of us talking about, Gamescom, because, that's the big thing going on today. But yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Also, feel free to call me Ronald however many times you want during the show. TPR, it's fine.
I'll keep it to once for the inside joke, as long as it's not offensive to you.
It's not offensive to me. Otherwise, I would have just said, please don't call me.
Okay.
It's all good. Cool. Well, now that we got some people in the chat here. We've got some people filtered in. We've killed enough time here with the pre-show. TPR, take it away, because TPR is going to do the intro today.
Right, here we go. Hey everyone, it's me, not Sean Capri, Taylor, TPR, Trevor, all of the above. I'm glad you're here because you're listening to the most horsepowerful podcast on the internet. It's the Xbox Drive. I'm on a Skype call with my friend Ryan Turford. He's the Ronald McDonald on the Moose. And on our journey today, I'm here. Sean's not. There's not a lot of Xbox news, but Gamescom just happened, and we're going to talk about it. And Ryan played Saints Row, and I'm eager to hear his opinion, so let's jump into the Xbox Drive. Bob!
TPR, aka Trevor, aka Taylor. How's it going, man? I hope you are having, a wonderful day, and I'm glad to have you on the show today, man.
Thank you so much, Ryan. It's an absolute privilege. So, thanks for having me.
Also, thank you for channeling Sean. I know we're both missing Sean this week. Sean's, doing whatever. He's traveling the globe. I don't actually know what Sean's doing. He just told me he was traveling somewhere this week. So I hope Sean's also having a good day, whatever it is that he's actually doing out there. But, you've got big shoes to fill today, but I know you're going to do great. And I can't wait to talk to you about some of today's stories, especially, too, because there's some of the Gamescom stuff that I know, like, you in particular would probably be very excited about. So I'm actually excited to talk about some of those things with you. But before we get into all that stuff, we got to clear the garage, because, it's dusty in there. There's dust mites in there. We got to get our brooms out and just start sweeping, because that's just
maybe there's some asbestos. Need a hazmat suit.
Oh, no. God, we don't want asbestos.
Heavy duty gear is kind of
okay. So for folks at home, if you want to support the show, there's a number of ways to do that. Number one, if you're watching the live stream right meow over on youtube.com/carpoolgaming, or if you're watching the video on demand later, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already, and then ding, 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 ring that bell to be notified whenever we put up new videos or whenever we go live with a live stream just like this one. Or also let us know in the comments below what you think about some of today's games that we're going to talk about, like Saints Row or, Gamescom in general. We want to hear from you, so let us know in the comments below. Also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to subscribe to us there. Don't forget to rate us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you're listening to us on those places. Also, if you want this show a little bit early or some additional extra content, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/carpoolgaming. Throw a little tip in the old tip jar, and out comes content, including maybe a new episode of Sweet Hangs later this week. So stay tuned for that over on the Patreon as well. And then last but not least, if you'd like an Xbox Drive t-shirt or another Carpool Gaming t-shirt of some kind, head on over to our merch store, bit.ly/CPG merch. Well, without further ado, it's time to grab our 8 tracks, pop them in. It's time for the playlist, and we got to talk about the games that we've been playing this week. So Taylor, I'm going to start with you because you've got a lot of interesting stuff listed here, and I want to hear about it. So what'd you play?
Thank you, Ryan. So this past week I played Mario Kart DLC with the Carpool Gaming community and also a little bit with you. You were on that stream on Saturday and
I
also the
was.
week before, too, Saturday before. 2 Saturdays in a row. And also I played a little bit on my own just because I wanted to check out the tracks more in detail. I tried becoming a Mario Kart semi-competitive player for about a half a day until I realized, I think I'll keep it casual on this one and stick with playing Smash semi-competitively with Kevin. Uh,
Nice.
but thanks.
I mean, I
Yeah,
don't know how many like competitive Mario Kart people there really can be out there because it's such a
yeah,
party game that and a lot of it just comes down to luck. So like,
yeah.
I don't even know how
There's
you can really be competitive at it, but sure.
there's a couple of people like a guy named Bear UNLV on Twitter and Twitch who's like pushing competitively, and apparently the amount of RNG is comparable to a game like League, believe
Right.
it or not. So he's trying to make a guy like him tries to make the argument that it should be honored as a competitive because it might seem like it's luck based, but when you look at other esports and other MOBAs, it's at the same amount of RNG. So I don't know, but yeah.
Nice.
Other than that, I've been playing a 2 Point Campus, but real life edition, as I like to call it, aka back to college to finish my final semester of my
Oh,
undergraduate studies. So
dude, that's awesome. Now
thank
we
you.
got to ask, what are you taking anyways in college?
Thanks. So I'm taking a lot of upper level electives. So I'm taking Intro to Glass Science, which is cool. Very cool. Really interesting professor and interesting class. I mean, how glass is made and stuff like that is on a surface level seems pretty interesting to me. Um, I'm also taking rocks, igneous rocks and metamorphic rocks.
Nice.
The scientific name for it is petrology, but I just call it rocks.
It's just rock class where you just have
Yeah,
rocks on your desk. You talk about
yeah, yeah,
rocks. It's a rock
yeah,
class.
yeah. Listen to hard rock, the whole deal.
Dang.
Yeah. And other than that, I'm also taking a metals processing course.
Ooh,
I know that sounds really interesting, but it's about we melt stuff and talk about melting things. So that's fun.
nice.
And I have a lab, and I'm also finishing my undergrad thesis. So
Nice.
yes,
That's awesome, man. Well, it's
thanks.
good. I'm not used to people going back to school, in the middle of August, but I think that's just how America works. Here in Canada, most people don't actually return to school, even college or university until like September, like the middle of September,
Okay,
because of, holidays and other things.
interesting.
But I always forget about that because I used to live in the States, so I remember going back to school in
But
August.
yeah,
But that's good. At least, hopefully, you have a good, rest of your school year, and you learn a lot about rocks and metals.
thanks. Yeah, just one
That'll
more
be fun.
semester. So
Yeah.
December I walk.
That's
Yeah,
awesome, man. Well,
thank you.
as for me, I've been playing some games. So number one, I played Mario Kart with y'all. I won't talk about that. I've also been playing a lot of games for the RPG Cave as far as research.
Okay,
I've been revisiting some Sega CD games like Lunar Eternal Blue, as well as some other stuff for some upcoming episodes of the RPG Cave. But again, I'm not going to bore people with that because there's one game in particular I really want to talk about, and that game is Saints Row. This is from Volition and Deep Silver. We actually, huge thank you to Deep Silver for sending us a code for it. They sent us a code for review. I will actually be reviewing Saints Row, and a review should be up on the channel. I'm looking to record it on Sunday, so it should be up by Monday. It'll be on the podcast feeds and on the YouTube channel, so you can go check it out wherever you'd like to go check out our review. And I know. I didn't read any of the reviews, first of all, because, we kind of have a policy here at Carpool Gaming where if we get a code or if we get a game for review after it comes out or after the reviews come out, we don't look at other reviews, while working on our review, so we don't get, tainted by other reviews. So I haven't actually read other reviews, but it's been very impossible to ignore people mentioning to me here's what the Metacritic looks like
yeah,
for fantasy critic purposes. So I do know it didn't score very well as far as scores are concerned. But
you
you
like
know
it.
what, Taylor? I really like this game a lot. I've had a very hard time putting it down. I'm just having a blast with this game.
Awesome, Ryan.
I'm actually someone who really like the old Saints Row games, like Saints Row the Third, for example. I think is an amazing game still to this day. I
Awesome.
love going back to it, especially the remastered version that they did. I think was a really great remastering of a classic game. And it's all about just causing mayhem and just having fun in this very goofy open world. And the new Saints Row is pretty much just the same. It's a little bit different in tone because it's not as wacky as the previous Saints Row games. Like Saints Row 4, for example, you had superpowers, you could like run up buildings and fly and stuff.
Yeah.
But in the new Saints Row, you don't have any of that stuff. It is more grounded, and it's a reboot of the series where you're basically creating the Saints from the ground up. So it's just showing the origin of the Third Street Saints in a completely different city this time around. It's a city that's based off Las Vegas this time around with a bunch of casinos and stuff like that. So I actually am really enjoying, though, just the act of, driving around, the act of shooting, even though none of it feels amazing and the graphics aren't amazing, but, just blowing stuff up is just super satisfying. Just the weapons that you have at your disposal are kind of wacky and goofy, but also just fun to shoot and play with. And you've got some really cool, like over the top, like instant kill abilities, as well as some other goofy abilities. Like you've got like an ability to light your hand on fire and then punch someone and they like fly backwards and get stunned. You've also got a bunch of like grenades and like smoke screens and stuff. So there's a lot of interesting ideas in Saints Row. And it's also the type of game too, where if you've been jonesing for like an open world game that has like a bajillion things to do on it with, here's a district and here's all the things that you need to do to fortify that district. Like, this is your game, because there's so much to do in this game, and it only progresses like exponentially as you play through the game as well, because as you play through it, you then can build like different buildings for the Saints, and each building will have a different purpose. For example, you can build like a waste treatment plant, which then allows you to make money off delivering barrels of toxic waste, because I guess companies want to sell off those. And then there's a whole quest line that's just devoted to the toxic waste dump, as well as, different objectives that you have to do in order to unlock that mission. So it's really interesting open world design that, again, just doesn't feel like it's like doing anything super revolutionary or anything like that, but it's just really fun. So I'm about 12 hours in. I just got the game on Monday, which just shows just how much I'm enjoying this. Like, it's been pretty hard for me to put the controller down. But yeah, there's a lot of glitches and bugs. But there's been nothing game breaking or nothing that's really affected gameplay, which for me is like the best kind of jank, especially in a game like this too, because it's not trying to take itself serious or anything like that. So Saints Row is the type of game where it's like, if I was to, throw my review out here now, before beating the game, I would say, though, this is the type of game that's really fun, but maybe wait for a sale, because then, a lot of the bugs and glitches I think will be ironed out by the time a sale comes around for this game. But who knows? My opinion might change after I've finished playing it. So, like I said, I'm expecting to hopefully finish it by this weekend, or at least I'm hoping to, because Soul Hackers 2 is out on Friday, and I'd like to put some time into that as well before Splatoon 3 comes out in next month. So,
you're buying it? You're buying Splatoon?
Yeah, I might. I'm pretty sure I'm day one on Splatoon.
Ooh, okay.
The test fire is this weekend too, so I'm actually excited to check that out too.
Yes, I'm playing that too. I also got a notification that my Last of Us Firefly Edition pre-order is going to be charged soon. So September is a lot of games.
Yeah, and likewise, I got my Cowabunga collection, collector's edition coming next week too. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming up to be excited about. But yeah, that's it for me as far as games I've been playing. Again, a lot of stuff for RPG Cave, and then Saints Row. I've just been pouring all my time into that. But let's slam the brakes on this conversation, because it's time for some breaking news. And if y'all wanted release dates or just news from Gamescom, you're in the right place, because that's mostly what we're going to be talking about today. I had other stories planned, but I'm like, I don't want this show to be 2 hours long today. So we're gonna mostly talk about Gamescom, and a lot of the stuff wasn't just from opening night live. We're going to cover some of the announcements from there, but also just some stuff that came out this morning that I was pretty surprised we got release dates for. And we're going to start with the newest game from Microsoft Game Studios and Obsidian. Pentiment has a release date. It's going to launch on November 15th. There was also a ton of preview coverage from a lot of our friends in the industry. I know Console Creatures, for example, had a big write-up about it. You can go over there and go read more information about it. Also, I know Xbox Drive alumni, Steve Vegvari, wrote up a preview over on Mobile Syrup as well. So I would encourage y'all to go and maybe check out some of these, some of the preview coverage for Pentiment, because it sounds like it's going to be a really interesting game. And I know Bobby Paul, who works for Console Creatures, he was mentioning that when he saw the original trailer for Pentiment, he was not, excited for that game. But then after playing the preview, he's way more excited about it, which was kind of like this feeling that I had about Psychonauts 2, where it's a game I wasn't super excited about, but I'm more interested about it reading the previews. But what about you, TPR? Where's your feeling on Pentiment as a game?
I'm very open to see what it's like. This announcement kind of came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any amazing thoughts from that right now. What I'm more interested, I guess, here's me deflecting. What I'm more interested in from Obsidian is to finally see what Avowed is. That's been one of my most anticipated games for a long time. That's what I want to see come out of the woodwork for Obsidian sooner rather than later. But yeah, nothing much regards to Pentiment for me. But
Yeah.
see how it works.
Nice. I mean, as for me, again, this is a game that I was cautiously optimistic about after seeing it at the Xbox showcase over the summer, because it looks like it's more of like a point and click adventure and just very different from a lot of other games from Obsidian. But I know how good, their writing team is over at Obsidian, and I'm expecting some great dialogue here. So, with a lot of these positive previews, it's definitely much higher on my charts now than it was maybe a week ago, even.
Yeah. I think I'd actually like to revert what I said about it, because after seeing the game, I forgot this is what I first thought about As Dusk Falls before the game came out. I'm like, oh, I see this art style and this, that, and the other. This doesn't seem like it's going to be that great. But like you said, great writing can take a game leaps and bounds. So I'm gonna keep it on my radar and not make the same mistake I did with As Dusk Falls and have it be a critical, outstanding success. So I'm happy. I hope it succeeds, I guess.
Yeah, I hope so too. Again, as Garrett Bland points out in the chat, it's $20, so it's going to be, a shorter with but I think, with a game like this, I actually prefer that. Like, I don't think it needs to be too overblown or anything like that. So I'm excited to check it out. And plus, it's going to be on Game Pass, so you can't really argue with that. But speaking of As Dusk Falls, I have to show this off. So 1 second, I'm just going to scroll back here.
Ooh. Physical media is entering the camera.
So
let's see it.
Our friends at Microsoft Canada actually sent us this As Dusk Falls art piece. This was drawn by some amazingly talented local Toronto artists. So there are 3 of them that came together. I actually tweeted this out on my Twitter, but I'll even hold it up to the camera. I can't really talk. Well, I'm sure.
For audio listeners, this is basically a board games dimension of art. Custom art from a local Toronto artist, as Ryan just said, for As Dusk Falls. That's amazing. Yeah, this thing is super awesome, and I'm so thankful to our friends at Xbox for putting this together, for sending it to us. I know they actually sent one to me, Court, and Sean, so we've all got one of these hanging in our houses. But it's going to be kind of in the background of the video, so it's a little bit harder to see. But I had to show that off at least a little bit since we were talking about As Dusk Falls. So thank you for reminding me. Now stall the people for a second, TPR, while I put this back. I bet you Donnie would love to have that on his shelf. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I saw him tweet. He was very jealous about it. So there you go. Well, next up on the release date shuffle, Sonic Frontiers actually has a release date. It will launch on Xbox One and Xbox Series S on November 8th. This did not get delayed as people had expected. Sonic Frontiers getting delayed. It is actually coming out this year, and from what they showed in the new trailer from Gamescom, I feel like, and I said this on the live stream that Kevin and I did while we were watching Open Night Live together. Every time I see a trailer for Sonic Frontiers, a new one, I'm more excited for the game. I actually think if they would have started with the last 2 trailers that they showed off for this game, instead of doing the IGN first thing where they explored the open environment, I think people would have been much higher on this game versus what we saw here. But did you get a chance to check out the new trailer at all, Taylor?
Yeah, I thought it looked interesting. I'm keeping an open mind for Sonic Frontiers, and I'm not really high on the game. I'm not really low on the game either. Right. I'm just curious to see what happens. I think it would be great if Sonic gets another good 3D game again. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people might say, oh, 3D Sonic hasn't been good since Generations or Colors, or even if you want to call those necessarily not quote unquote true 3D Sonic, but there are a lot of people who say Sonic 3D Sonic hasn't been good since Sonic Adventure 2 and this stuff.
Yeah.
So I wonder if Sonic Frontiers finally gives them back what they so wish for. And I hope it does well. And I don't really understand the hate towards the game. It's don't don't people want franchises and especially established IP like a new Sonic game to succeed? I
Yeah.
never really understood all the hate towards it. So I'm here rooting for it.
Especially too, because there was like, I think a lot of that comes from just the built-up rivalry for us as kids, which was, Sonic versus Mario, who's better. When obviously they're just very different types of games, and that's just the way I've always thought about them. So that's why I like both. So
Yeah.
to your point, I really hope that this is just the win that they really need for Sonic. Where I hope this is awesome. I want it to be great, and I think I think it has the best chance out of like any of the 3D Sonic games we've seen in the last 10 or 20 years of doing this.
Wow.
So, like, not including something like Sonic Adventure, I think is, to your point,
Right,
is
right,
the other really good one. But I mean, it has a lot more promise than, Sonic 06 had going into it, or Sonic Unleashed, or even something like Sonic Generations too. So,
Shadow.
yeah, or Shadow. But yeah, I'm excited for this one. I hope it's great. So November 8th, though, little bit of rough of a launch period as well, because it's the day before God of War Ragnarok. But but for us over on Xbox, the only other game we're getting that day is Skull and Bones. Because so for us Xbox fans or people that have Switches specifically, I think that's why Sega's okay with being the same week as God of War, because they might not have a huge install base on PlayStation that day, but I think a lot of people will probably pick it up on Switch or Xbox that maybe don't have PS5. So
Yeah. And I'm more interested in Sonic Frontiers than Skull and Bones. If I do say so myself.
No kidding. Yeah, I think actually this just kind of buries Skull and Bones a bit more for that release date too.
Right.
But yeah, we'll see. But next up, a game that Ryan Turford, I'm pretty excited about. And they launched a new trailer for this today as well. The Dark Pictures anthology, The Devil in Me, launches on November 18th. So this ends up finishing the season 1 of the Dark Pictures anthology. We know there's supposed to be 2 seasons, so there's supposed to be 4 more games in the series with Bandai Namco with Supermassive. But this is another horror game in the vein of something like the Quarry or the other Dark Pictures anthology games. I've really come around these games where at first, like the first 2 games, like Man of Medan and Little Hope, I wasn't a huge fan on, but House of Ashes, the last one that just came out last year, I really enjoyed. And the Quarry earlier this year, I know was a divisive game for some people, but I also really like that game too. So, and everything I've seen about this one, I'm pretty excited about. Like it's a reality TV show that's set inside like a spooky castle that's full of traps, but then this like evil mastermind person has like booby trapped the castle ahead of time, and it feels like very Saw-ish. And I'm excited for this. But what about you, TPR? I don't think we ever talked about horror games. Do you like games like this? What do you think?
So me with horror is an interesting conversation. I guess the short answer is, am I looking forward to Dark Pictures anthology? No, but on the greater context of horror, I kind of came around to it later in my life. Like, I didn't watch Alien until I was 16, and now it's my favorite film of all time. Yeah.
We're like the same person, because like that's also my favorite film of all time. So.
Oh, there we go. That's awesome, Ryan.
Nice. But continue. I cut you off.
No, you're good. You're good. And I also played The Last of Us when I was younger, with all my parents knowing. And that had some horror elements. And I played Bloodborne, which was a lot of cosmic, eldritch type horror elements. So and I watched a lot of the 80s slasher films as I've gotten closer into my college years. And I've recently watched Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 for the first time.
Nice.
Love those films. I'm going to watch Heart of Darkness next. Thanks. Or is it Army of Darkness?
Army of Darkness, yeah.
Army of Darkness next, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of warming up to it in movies, but in games, other than Last of Us and Bloodborne, I tried Resident Evil 7. I couldn't get through it. I was too anxious and scared. So I don't know. I don't think an Until Dawn or another supermassive title like Dark Pictures Anthology is a game for me, but I'm gaining more and more interest in to try a supermassive title.
Okay.
Probably would be Until Dawn, but I hope the Dark Pictures Anthology, Devil in Me succeeds. But I don't think it's a game for me, at least at this point in my life.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, Growing up, I wasn't super into horror until, I was in high school as well. Like I saw Alien for the first time when I was much younger, probably when I was like 8 or 9. But I didn't really appreciate it for the film it was back then. But then it wasn't, but then, as I was getting older, I was, getting much more into, slasher films and stuff like that. To now it's one of my favorite genres. Like sci-fi horror in particular is like my favorite thing out there. So every time we get a new game in that, like something like the Callisto Protocol, which we saw a new trailer for this week,
Right.
and I'm like super jazzed for that game. Like you definitely get a different feeling, though, to your point about like it feeling much more spooky when you're in control of it versus if you're passive,
Yeah.
like if you're watching a movie. So
I guess I will say I played some of Dead Space and I haven't dropped off of it yet. Maybe being in third person takes me off the leash a little bit.
yeah, and the nice thing about the super massive games like Dark Pictures Anthology or Until Dawn is they're all third-person games as well in that same regard. And they're also too like there's a lot of quick time events, or you're doing a lot of exploring, but you're not really doing a lot of combat or anything like that. Although I'd be really interested to find out what your take would be at some point of Alien Isolation, because I'd love to know what if you ever get a chance to play that, what you'd think about that.
I might play it one day, but I just heard from other people that it's horrifying.
It is very scary. It's one of the scariest games I've ever played in my life.
Yeah.
But it's amazing as an Alien fan. It's like the game as like an Alien 1 fan that I've wanted my entire life. But it's super scary.
Wow.
So you have to be
No
careful
kidding.
with that.
I actually might play not Isolation, but I think it's still on Game Pass if I remember correctly. Aliens Fire Team Elite.
Yeah, that's
might jump
the
in that
Left
for
4
a
Dead
bit.
style game. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't expect it to be anything groundbreaking, but I always enjoy me some more Alien.
Yeah, I played it when it came out, and I thought it was pretty fun. But yeah, you might have a good time with that one. Well, speaking of horror games, a horror game has reemerged. Dead Island 2 is back from the grave. It will launch on Xbox One and Series X and S on February 3rd, 2023. We got a new trailer for it, although believe it or not, it was another CG trailer, and then they eventually gave us a gameplay trailer right after it during opening it live, but it was like a very canned gameplay trailer where there was no HUD or anything like that, and you were moving through the environments very quickly, so we still don't really have like a good sense of like what you're actually doing in Dead Island 2, but I'm hoping it's not bad. But Taylor, where are you at with Dead Island 2?
When I first saw it come up, I was like, oh God, Dead Island's back. Like, it's become a bit of a meme at this point, especially with the leak last week. It's like, it's been however long since the first game, and it's what could they, and I guess almost a decade since Riptide.
Yeah.
And it's how can they, what are they going to do with the franchise now?
Right.
But honestly, from what I saw in the trailer, I think this game looks good.
Yeah.
And they kind of tease us where I'm like, oh great, it's just a cinematic trailer. And then the next piece of footage was, okay, now here's some of the gameplay, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what I saw of the game yesterday, I'm actually interested. I don't think it's my most anticipated game from the conference.
Right.
You probably know what that is, and it's coming up in our news.
Yeah.
But it might be number 2 from the showcase. I'm very interested to see what it has in store. Am I going to play it? Maybe, maybe not, but it might get me in the mood for playing a Dying Light for the first time, or a Dead Rising.
Yeah, because they're all very different styles of zombie RPG, or even something like State of Decay 2, which just kind of falls into a similar camp as a lot of these games as well. Dead Island 2 is a game that like I hope is really good. I know that the first 2 were plagued with technical problems, and that was before Techland kind of became the studio that they are now with Dying Light. But I can't get more than cautiously optimistic for Dead Island 2, only because of the developer who is making this, which is Dambuster Studios, and you might know them from Homefront: The Revolution was their last game, which was one of the worst first-person shooters I've ever played in my entire life. So I hope it's a better game than that, and that's all I can ask for. That's why like I'm going in with the lowest of low expectations, hoping that this wins me over. Like, I hope that this is the one game that really wins me over on Dead Island, because I like the idea of Dead Island. Like, I like the idea of like as post-apocalyptic zombie RPG. And the first 2 Dead Island games were just kind of okay at best. And I'm just hoping that this one just is as good, if not better, than those games. So
okay,
we'll see.
cool.
But
yeah,
all right.
Nice.
Next up, I have to read this news story just for Donnie Reese. If Donnie Reese was here, he'd
Yes.
force us to read this. 2K have announced that PGA Tour 2K23 will launch on October 14th with the Deluxe and Tiger Woods editions of the games getting a few days early access on October 11th. So I actually like the PGA 2K games. They don't really have like a ton of content, which is always kind of its downside. I know, like I was on PSVG last week with Donnie, and he was talking about that because we had like a big topic about golf games over there. And it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out, especially with a lot of players leaving the PGA. But I don't know. I'm curious to see how this one turns out because again, I think that the company that makes these, like who make the golf channel games, I think they do a good job with golf games. So I hope this one's good as well. But does golf do anything for you, Taylor? What do you think?
No, it doesn't. It's not a sport I follow. I guess the most experience I have with golf is playing Mario 64, Mario Golf on the Nintendo 64 online with Switch, with Donnie and a few others in the room, and dealing with input latency on Switch expansion pack. That's my most experience with video game golf or golf in any form. But
Excellent.
but it's not for me. But I hope golf fans get what they want. And I'm a big fan of basketball, and I'm familiar with playing a lot of sports 2K, NBA 2K games.
Right.
So I know the struggle that sports fans have with getting a good sports game, especially when they're on a yearly release schedule.
Well, in golf, we don't even get on a yearly release schedule. It's every 2 years. So it's like,
right.
Yeah, it's been 2K20 was the last golf game that we got.
Okay.
And
so
then,
I hope they come back strong.
Yeah. And then we're getting another one from EA next year because they're doing their own PGA golf game as well, which is interesting. So
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm the type of person like you, Taylor, who doesn't like watching golf, but I like playing golf games in particular. It's like,
Okay.
I'm like that with wrestling too, where I don't really like, I'm not into watching, WWE or anything like that, but I like playing wrestling video games because I just think they're fun, like more fun than watching them. So that's why I'm actually excited for this one. Will I play day one? Probably not, because it's coming out in the middle of October. The last time we got the last PGA game that we got from 2K came out in like the middle of the summer, which was like the perfect time to play it, which is why I think we put a ton of time into it. But October 14th, it's a big ask, I think, with a lot of the other games coming out around then. So We'll see. But next up, we got to do this for all the Destiny 2 fans in the house. Destiny 2's newest expansion, Destiny 2 Lightfall, has been announced. It'll launch on February 28th, 2023. Bungie has also announced that they will no longer be sunsetting expansions for Destiny, meaning that from this point on, content will not be removed from the game to prepare for each expansion releases. They might still remove, like seasonal events and stuff like that, but they're not going to remove like any expansion contents, because each time there was like a new expansion for Destiny coming out, in order to make the file size smaller for Destiny, they would remove an expansion from play. And it doesn't sound like they're doing that this time around, which might indicate to me maybe to some of the people in the Destiny community that we might be coming to the end of Destiny 2 specifically as we know it. Whether that means they come out with a new client or if it means that Destiny 3 is happening at some point. I'm curious to know what happens from here. But do you play Destiny at all, Taylor?
No, I don't, but I'm a fan of movement shooters overall, and like games like Dusk, a medieval ultra kill from an indie developer called New Blood Interactive, and I'm a fan of the first 3 Halo games, which I've recently played for the first time. And obviously Bungie made them, so how do I say this? I'm not a Destiny 2 fan, but I respect the game from afar. Okay. And I actually came into trying to get into it a couple times, and the thing that deterred me from it was knowing that Bungie vaulted DLC with no accessibility after the fact, which really rubbed me the wrong way about wanting to get into it, especially with buying expansions and stuff like that. So
yeah,
this might actually get me into the game with the right people, knowing that the content I buy, I will perpetually have access to, which is a big issue for me. Game access, game preservation on the digital front. It's maybe this is me being a little offensive to Bungie, but it's the least they could do to let me access the content I bought. So
no, for sure, especially as someone like me who plays a ton of MMOs. Like one of the coolest things about playing an MMO that's been playing for a long time, like a World of Warcraft or a Final Fantasy 14, is that even if you're new to the game, you've got like 10 expansions worth of content you can go back to and experience for yourself and have a good time with, and those will always be preserved there in a way that just you can't go back and play the original Destiny 2 campaign when it came out. It isn't there anymore. They removed it from the game completely, which makes me sad because I actually liked that campaign a lot. Like, I thought it had a cool story and it had some interesting characters, and I liked what they did with it. So it makes me sad that there's no way you can go back and play that anymore. Which, just like you, like it makes me just want to stay away from the game even further, that you can't go back and play all the game's content. So I hope that this is a good sign going forward. But I do think that this kind of signals to me that at some point, there's maybe 3 or 4 more expansions of Destiny 2 at the most before they transition maybe to Destiny 3 or some kind of new client that houses everything. Because otherwise the file size will be over 200 gigs and people will start complaining again about it.
Yeah. Do you think maybe the acquisition from Sony has anything to do with why they're not vaulting expansions? Well, I guess that wouldn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe they were vaulting expansions to financially incentivize people to buy the most recent expansion and get the most money. But if they kept their previous expansions available for sale, you would think they'd also get revenue there too. So I wonder if I don't think the PlayStation really acquisition has any bearing on this, but this is just interesting that this came about at the time it did.
Yeah, I don't think so either, especially because like I think this is probably something that was planned out before the Sony acquisition even happened. So
right.
I'm pretty sure that's the point of it. Again, I don't think the reason was to incentivize people to play the newest thing. I think it was just a matter of they just physically can't, like, people don't have hard drives that can physically hold all of the expansions, because otherwise it was like before they started pruning the expansions, it was like a 200 to 300 gig game. Let alone with the new content too, it probably would be like over 400 gigs to keep on your hard drive at this point, which wouldn't even probably fit on a Series S at this point. So
you should be able to like plug in, make it modular, saying I want this expansion on my drive at this time, this expansion, and uninstall this one, put this one on.
Like Call of Duty does, because like Call of Duty does that, but with the multiplayer and single player. But anyways, moving on. I think this is probably the game you're most excited about, but so you might surprise me with the other ones later. But I know when Kevin and I were watching the live stream, we both said to each other, like, this is definitely a Taylor game, I think. A gameplay trailer for Lies of P, a Souls-like game starring Pinocchio, has been shown off at Gamescom opening night live, and the game will launch in 2023, and it will be at day one on Xbox Game Pass. This looks like you're playing as like a robotic person in Bloodborne is pretty much what this looks like to me.
I was gonna say the amount of inspiration here from software, specifically Bloodborne, is almost uncanny. The way your primary weapon here moves reminds me of Ludwig's Holy Blade from those who've played that game, the big greatsword. But if you told me the concept of Lies of P on paper, I would say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe this will turn into like another Lords of the Fallen situation. Nothing against Lords of the Fallen, it just missed a bit from where it was trying to reach. But after seeing this gameplay trailer, I am outstandingly interested. I will probably be playing this on day one, and this is now one of my most anticipated games of 2023, Ryan. I am absolutely astonished and delighted to see a game so inspired by Bloodborne, and Bloodborne is tied for my favorite game of all time. So
nice. Yeah.
This is quite exciting for me.
It looks pretty good. I saw a lot of people talking about it as well. I know a lot of people are very excited about Lies of P. I think it was like I saw that it was actually trending #1 in the United States across all things when that trailer happened on Twitter. So I think there's a lot of excitement behind this game, as Kevin points out in the chat. And even though I'm not a super, Souls-born person, like some of the games work for me and some of them don't. Like I'm more into, games like Neo or Code Vein rather than, Bloodborne or Dark Souls. I'm really excited to at least try this one out because it is on Game Pass, so I know I won't have to buy it or anything like that. And we'll get it day one, and I'm excited to at least play this one and see if it's for me, because if it is, like, I think it's going to be a really good time. And likewise for you, if you're into this type of game, I think this is like a slam dunk. Probably.
I am to this type of game, but I'm only 25 hours into Elden Ring, and I dropped it in late March, and I haven't come back to it since. Not because I don't like it, because it was just so much a game. So It's not like these games are my blood and soul. But Bloodborne specifically just hit it home with me, and I'm a fan of the more self-contained FromSoft experiences, I think.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Next up, this caught me off guard. I did not expect this announcement at all, but an asymmetrical multiplayer game based off the 80s horror film Killer Clowns from Outer Space has been announced, and it will launch on Xbox Series X and S sometime in 2023. It looks like some of the team members who worked on Friday the 13th, the game, are working on this game, which is a game that I really enjoyed as like a Friday the 13th fan who loves all those movies. Like I loved playing that game, even though it was also full of jank in the same way that Saints Row was. It almost felt like emblematic of the Friday the 13th franchise, because it is kind of, those movies are just jank in a way, but I just have a soft spot for them. So to see kind of this love put into a Killer Clowns from Outer Space game, I'm like very excited to try this one out. This was one of my most anticipated games from the show, because of just how goofy of an idea this is and how much I want to play this. But what about you? Because I know since you're getting into horror movies, like what do you think about this Killer Clowns game?
I am very, I don't know if surprised is the word, curious about this game and how it pans out. I don't think it's necessarily on my immediate radar, but I hope for people like you it pans out. So yeah, I not much more than that for me, but it's such a niche.
Yeah,
Almost
definitely.
like the game is putting itself into this small pocket, just to see if it pans out. But I hope it succeeds, and if it lands in Game Pass down the line, I'll probably try it there. But
Nice.
yeah,
I mean, like you're aiming even smaller than something like Friday the 13th is, because even though Friday the 13th is like a bigger genre or bigger franchise, it's not like huge or anything like that. But it is bigger in the horror space, whereas Killer Clowns, you're right, it is like much more niche. But it also, I think, opens up some interesting gameplay possibilities as well, because there are three clowns instead of just Jason this time around. So I'm curious to know like how their abilities are going to differ from each other,
from each other.
Yeah, or even like what it's gonna play like to be like one of the civilians trying to get away from them. So I'm curious to know more about this game, and I know I think there's an open beta coming before the end of the year, so I'm gonna try and get into that and find out more, because I'm excited for this game. But next up, we got a new game announcement from Quantic Dream. They announced their new game, Under the Waves. It's an underwater narrative adventure. It will be released sometime in 2023 on Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S. So their 3-game deal with Sony is over, and now Quantic Dream is making games multi-platform. And I love the idea behind this, because we don't get a lot of like underwater games in particular. Like this one just looks like your Quantic Dream affair, where it's like you're very like point and click adventure style, where you're walking around and interacting with stuff, kind of in the same vein as the gameplay we talked about with Dark Pictures Anthology games. But it's not going to be a horror game by the sounds of it, and it looks interesting. Like I like the idea of this. Maybe it'll be like the 1980s movie The Abyss, where maybe there's aliens under the water or something like that, because they showed off in the trailer that there's going to be some like fantastical moments that are happening as well. So it sounds to me like there's some kind of like supernatural element at play here. And I'm curious to know what else there is going on with this game. I like Quantic Dream's games though, and that style of game, but I know they're not for everyone. And I don't know if they're for you, Taylor. What do you think?
Yeah, Quantic Dream, I haven't really played their games that much. I'm not a big fan of not necessarily point and click, but dialogue type games. Like I'm not a big Telltale Games guy or a Quantic Dream type games guy. But underwater games sound cool.
Mm-hmm.
The last really interesting narrative-based underwater adventure, maybe if you want to BioShock comes to mind. I know it's different, a very different type of game, but in terms of an underwater setting here, games have done cool things with it in the past, and I hope they do good things with it here.
Yeah.
So, and they've been known for their writing. Like I've heard of all the different branching paths in Detroit Become Human,
Yeah.
and those games. So I hope it succeeds. But yeah,
I'm expecting more of that as well, and I hope this one's good. Again, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm also just excited that their games are coming to Xbox. Like, even though I don't think getting any of their games from their back catalog on Xbox anytime soon, I am excited that at least we're getting their newest game on Xbox. Because again, they've been stuck on PlayStation for so long. It's cool to see them over here on the green side. But then last game I wanted to talk about from Gamescom. Again, we didn't decide not to go through every single game at Gamescom for the sake of time here, but this last one I wanted to bring up because I know, like, Kevin and I were really excited about this one during the showcase, and I'm curious on your take on this one, TPR. The Surge developer Deck 13 have announced their new game, Atlas Fallen, a new action RPG set in a vast desert on an unknown planet. It'll launch on Xbox Series X and S sometime in 2023. I think this game looks pretty awesome. Like, there's sandworms and a bunch of other like creatures that you have to fight, and it just looks like a fast action RPG. Like, I think this game looks really dope. And even though I didn't really love the Surge for, because I didn't really love their take on like the Soulsborne genre, I'm curious to know how this one's going to play. But I want to know from you, since I talked about it a lot yesterday with Kevin. What do you think about this, TPR?
Yeah, so I think it looks extremely interesting. I also was not a fan of either of the Surge games coming from Deck 13. So in terms of managing my expectations, I'm not expecting this to be anything better than a good game, but the setting to me is way more interesting than the Surge games. There's a lot of really cool stuff you could do with desert planets, explore your own version of a Tatooine type deal if you could. And I'm keeping an eye out for the setting alone. So if it does well, I might hop on it, but I don't think I'm gonna get on it day one. But I hope it pans out eventually, and I'm keeping it on my radar.
Nice. Yeah. I'm also excited about this one. I don't know if it's also day one. I kind of want to know a little bit more about the game here, but I really like that game too. So I'm excited to learn more about it. Hopefully sometime next year we'll get like a deeper dive on this game. But it was pretty cool. But all in all, to kind of round out our Gamescom talk, we actually got 2 questions this week that are pretty much asking the same thing. We're going to start with the most famous of all Seamus's, famous Seamus, who asks, favorite game from Gamescom opening night, and then biggest surprise. And the Muffin Mon, aka Kevin Ainsworth, says, yes, hi, question for my co-host Taylor. How could you keep it a secret from your own podcast network that you're going on the Xbox Drive?
He invited like an hour before he sent this message.
It's true. He's not wrong about that. In all seriousness, no, what was your favorite game shown off at Gamescom now that we are 24 hours out? So folks want to know what our favorite game was here. I'm assuming yours is Life of P, right? Or Lies of P, right?
No, Ryan. Actually, my favorite game here definitely has to be Killer Clowns from... No, I'm just kidding. It's Lies of P.
Yeah.
Lies of P takes the cake, no question. I am eager to see this game release and play it.
For a second there, I thought you were going to troll me and say the Dune MMO that we saw, which I also thought looked really interesting, but it's not. We don't know if it's coming to Xbox, so that's why we didn't, round that up here in the stories here. Yeah, as for me, honestly, you joked about it, but I think between Sonic Frontiers and Killer Clowns from Outer Space, I think those were the 2 games.
No hate. It's just not a me type of game, I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. Or the other one that I mentioned earlier, Callisto Protocol as well. But I mean, duh. Of course, I'm excited about that game too. But
really wondering if that gets delayed.
That's what I mean. That's what I've been joking about with Sean, because we've been talking about Fantasy Critic a lot, of course, and it's set for December 9th. So if it gets delayed by 3 weeks, even it's a 2023 game at that point. So it's ineligible for Fantasy Critic. So it's a little bit of a risk maybe to pick that one for Fantasy Critic. But
so it pans out. Yeah.
But then biggest surprise, I think. Biggest surprise, obviously, is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I, again, had no idea that was coming. I know people had mentioned that, in the Jeff Grubb Discord, that Jeff Grubb had talked about that's actually a game that existed. But, of course, I'm, not keeping up with everything Jeff Grubb says. So I was very, very shocked to see that game there. So that's definitely my biggest surprise with Killer Clowns. And it actually looking like a game that is going to be fun to play. But,
yep.
Yeah. All right, well, let's set some of our friends into the car with us. It is time for the carpool. And we're going to start once again with the most famous of all Seamus's, famous Seamus, who has a second follow-up question for us. He says, a few weeks ago, the Dead by Daylight developers released a dating sim called Hooked on You. If you could choose, what Xbox series would you like to have a dating simulator spin-off? So, to give you time to think about this one, the one that I came up with was Diablo. I think Diablo would be just in the same vein as Dead by Daylight. I think it would be just funny to do like a Diablo dating sim. Just like you could date any one of the 6 character classes that are from Diablo, and you're like just a nameless protagonist, and you're trying to date one of the 6 protagonists from Diablo, while trying to avoid Diablo and the other immortal creatures from murdering you. But I need to know what you think about this, Taylor.
It took me a while to think of all the actual franchises that Xbox now owns between all their acquisitions recently. And I think it would be really funny to see a Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Conker's Bad Fur Day simulator. Okay, so are you playing as Conker and dating other characters, or is Conker one of the characters that you can date? How is this going to work?
What if you could play as a number of characters, including Conker, almost like picking your character in some Sonic games, and then you go from there. Different not story, but dating paths depending on which character you choose at the start of the game.
Okay.
And it would be really I hope it would be funny, hopefully not too offensive, but yeah, I think that would be hilarious, and I'd love to see it.
Nice. That's way more out there than my idea, so you'd love to see it. All right, next up, Nagachaka on the Discord asks, as a long-time listener but first-time Xbox owner, which, by the way, Nagachaka mentioned in the Discord, he had put up a whole PowerPoint presentation to convince his wife to let him buy an Xbox, and it worked. He has an Xbox now. So now that he's a new Xbox owner, what games would you recommend that I play first on Xbox besides Nier Automata and Nier Replicant? Now, we already know at this point that people in the Discord have actually been responding to Nagachaka all day with different suggestions. So I tried not to pull from any of those from my suggestions. But obviously, I think, as an Xbox owner, if you've never played the Halo games or the Gears games, you should. I mean, they're great. And they're very true to the spirit of Xbox. So, I mean, you should play at least one of them if you've never played any of them before, whether it's starting with Gears Ultimate or just Halo 1 and going from there, or just any of the Forza games in particular. And going from there. But again, those are the boring answers. So I want to hear from you, TPR. What do you think?
I don't think anyone mentioned this yet. And if they did, maybe this is just me being unlucky. But I think Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice is an excellent game to play on your Xbox. It got a 60 FPS patch recently. I think the 60 FPS also applies to Series S. It's just not.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, okay, quite up to par for the Series X in terms of resolution output.
Yeah, it's only 1080p, but it'll still play at 60 frames.
What an excellent game. I've played about 3.5 hours of it for the first time a few months ago, and play with headphones on. It is a game like no other, both disturbing, engaging, fun, and beautiful. It is quite an amazing example of what games as an art form can do, and I think it is most optimized in the console space on Xbox. So I highly recommend Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, Nagachaka.
That's a really good one. I totally forgot about Hellblade, but I loved that game too when it came out. Like, I remember platinuming it on PlayStation, and then when it came to Xbox, I got the 1,000 gamer score there too, because I really like that game too. So, and yeah, definitely if you're going to play it for the first time, Nagachaka, the game tells you to wear headphones. Do not ignore that advice. Play with headphones. It's way better if you do. And then our second last question of the week, because we actually got a question from the chat that I'm going to read in just a second, comes to us from Blaze Knight, who says, you get to design an ultimate Xbox crossover game featuring a major character from each Xbox first-party IP. What type of game would it be, and who would be some of the headliner characters? Be sure to include the upcoming Activision Blizzard IPs in your game as well. So before I throw it to you, because I'm actually pretty sure I kind of have an idea as to what you're going to say to this. So I'm going to pitch a different type of game than the one you're going to pitch, or at least the one I'm assuming you're going to pitch. And that I'm going to say, on the topic of golf games, I think we need an Xbox crossover golf game like Mario Golf, where you have to call just Xbox Golf, or they could even do it under the Fusion Frenzy moniker and just call it Fusion Frenzy Golf, where then you can bring in, Joanna Dark, Master Chief, Marcus Phoenix, Doom Guy, Tracer, Sylvanas from World of Warcraft, and a bunch of other characters to hit the links and play some golf games. So I think that'd be fun. I think it would be like very different from what you'd normally expect from a Microsoft crossover game. And I think just golf is just a fun and interesting game if you do it correctly, especially because they could have it be mini golf instead of normal golf, which everyone knows mini golf is the superior version of golf. But Taylor, how about you? What do you think?
I'm gonna hit you with a curveball here, Ryan. You
Oh,
probably thought I was gonna say Smash or something,
right.
but nope, that's not my answer. As I've alluded to before, I'm a big FPS fan, and I think an Xbox game type Unreal Tournament
Ooh.
Xbox crossover would be extremely cool, where each Xbox character has their own different powers and abilities, almost like I'm not a big fan of hero shooters, but each character in Overwatch, for example, has their specific abilities and stuff like that.
Mhm.
You had an arena Xbox Unreal Tournament game where each character had their own powers. You know, Banjo, Doom Guy, Master Chief, Call Call of Duty protagonist, um, Senua. Even characters who aren't FPS or aren't shooter by default, like Marcus Phoenix would be in there too. But include people like Senua,
Mhm.
like hell, even Crash Bandicoot. I don't know. It would be so cool to
Oh my
see
God.
characters that aren't usually built into shooters to get moves and head it off in an arena environment and cross play with PC, and it would be fantastic. And I'm here for it.
I'm very
I'm gonna
excited to
shooters me
find
up.
out what Spyro the Dragon's abilities are going to be in this game and how you control Spyro the Dragon in first person.
Who knows? That's up to Phil and the boys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We just come up with the concepts. They're the ones that have to lay out the groundwork. And then final question comes from the chat from Sean Cabreen. You mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to, he asked, so I have to bring it up. Question for the podcast. Does Taylor provide an update for Halo? And if so, why haven't you played Halo Reach yet? What's going on? Where are you in your Halo journey, Taylor?
I beat Halo 3. ODST is the next Halo game I have to play. I haven't played. I beat Halo 3 about 5 weeks ago,
Okay.
and yeah, I haven't picked it up ODST yet, but I intend to. I just Breath of the Wild kind of scooped me up for like 3 weeks. But between other than Last of Us remake, hopefully, well, maybe Splatoon. I'm going to get to ODST, at least ODST, by the end of the year. I hope to finish Reach by the end of the year, but I'm going through them at a slow pace, but slow and steady wins the race here. So, yeah, I'm still eager to play them,
Nice.
Sean. Not here, Sean.
Apparently he's been replaced. That's what he said in chat anyways. But
Yeah,
Sean apparently
he's
says
replaced.
skip ODST and go to Reach. I actually would defer from that. I think ODST is actually a good game, and you might
Okay.
actually like it. Because I
Sean,
like
how about this? I'll go to Reach if you tell me your PS4 username.
Oh
Right?
God. Oh God, no. Yeah, Garrett Bland also agrees ODST is also the best. So there you go. So you should definitely play it at some point. But that's awesome to hear that you're finally talking about playing the Halo games. I'd love to see it. But
No deal. Sean Capri says no deal.
so anyways, we should probably wrap up this show. But thank you once again for filling Sean's impressively large shoes today. I really appreciate you coming on the show with us, Taylor. But before we go, where can people find you?
Thanks. So I am not on Twitter because I'm not on Twitter.
Right.
But other than that, you can find me at podcasting over at Save the Game Media. I have a podcast called No Limits, a PlayStation podcast, and I'll get you my links so we can throw them in the show notes and stuff like that. But you just Google Save the Game Media, you'll be able to find our website, or if you search No Limits, a PlayStation podcast, or on all your favorite podcast services, you can find me there. And I also on another podcast once a week, usually called I Hate My Friends, where me, Kevin Ainsworth, and other members of our podcast network just talk about whatever we want. It's basically podcast network sweet hangs.
Nice.
And and we have a Nintendo podcast incoming that I'll be a host for, and a gaming, fitness, cooking podcast that I'll be launching in September as well, as part of the Patreon over there. So
You guys
a lot
got
of
so many
goodies.
podcasts over there.
Yeah, we all of a sudden it's all Kevin, man. He's working me to the. No, I'm just kidding.
God, y'all are
But-
turning into us now, or maybe I think we
Yeah.
need. That just means we need more. We need more carpool gaming podcasts, clearly, to try and keep up with
course,
the
of
surge
course.
of podcasts over at Save the Game Media. But
Yeah.
I've been super proud to see you guys grow ever since making the change over to Save the Game Media, and I have a lot of respect for what you guys do over there. So just keep up the awesome work, man. That's all I gotta say. But
Yeah, thank you. And no thanks to Sean for not being here. I can't believe he would miss. I'm just kidding, Sean. I filled your clown shoes just fine.
okay. As for me, well, you filled his pants, by the way, just like Luckless said in
And
the
his
chat.
pants. Yeah.
As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. tweeting a little bit now and then, but you can find me over there if you'd like to follow me. You also follow us on Twitter at Carpool Gaming. If you want to talk to Court Lalonde, he's over there. You also follow us on the YouTube at youtube.com/Carpool Gaming, on Patreon at patreon.com/Carpool Gaming, on podcast services around the globe. So for TPR/Taylor, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been episode 254 of the Xbox Drive, and we out. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Ryan. I really enjoyed this. It was a great time. Sean, what, you're not here? Why aren't you here? I really like Gamescom. Lightspeed looks really cool. All right, bye. I need to go play Halo 3 ODST bomb.